Welcome to Ladies of Another View, and I was going to say April, Ann, and me again today, Patty. And we have two guests on that are just going to fill up this show. So we only needed two of us. We don't even need, we don't even need one of us.
Oh,
I'm really looking forward to this. Craig Rucker is going to join us. He's been on the show before, but he's also going to comment about this documentary that is powerful that Tucker Carlson came out with, Blown Away. That really, shows you what's going on and has, anyways, and it's free to watch. So we're going to talk about that later on in the show. But first, I want to welcome to the show April Chapman with Project 21. Welcome to the show, April.
hello, ladies. Thank you so much for having me.
So you got a long bio. You've been involved in education, family issues. You're a Project 21 ambassador and a Christian conservative speaker, author, independent media personality, American patriot, and you're a host of Unshakable with April Chapman, your podcast. Good podcast. And you're going to, after people watch it too, they're going to want to hear more. So that's one way to do it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Let's start talking about, before we went on the show, we were talking about the breakdown of the family in the black community. And a lot of this leftist ideology and politics is to blame. And because what's going on in black families now isn't the way it always looked in the 60s and 70s. Take us back there and what it used to be like.
Absolutely. After Reconstruction, the Black family was kind of forced to not only stick together, but to figure out how to function in their freedom. And what many of them realized is that the nuclear family and faith in God was the lone bulwark that kept them strong and kept them together despite oppressive odds. And then when you fast forward to 1960, over 75% of Black American families were children were raised in a two-parent household. And then you had something come in. Instead of calling it the Great Society, I call it was the Great Chaos. A lot of people like to lay the claim at the feet of LBJ, but he didn't act alone in that. You had, believe it or not, I know people like to point to the virtue of the civil rights movement, but many of the civil rights leaders had a hand in actually shaping the worldview and the trajectory of the Black family to where we moved from self-reliance and family and God being our foundation to government dependence and welfareism. If you remember with the Civil Rights Act, right after that, MLK wanted to introduce the Poor People's Campaign, where he was asking for all of these socialistic programs that now, when you look at the Black community, we actually mirror more of a Marxist society within a capitalist society than ever before. And the breakdown of the family, you see it in our communities, in every socioeconomic category that can be measured. We are at the bottom, and the family is at the breakdown of the family is at the core of all of that.
Absolutely, and it's encroached in every culture and every nation, really. It's just, there's definitely a malignant plan at play, and I'm just grateful to see that there are so many different cultures that are really waking up and understanding and seeing what's going on around them and how they are systematically, being taken advantage of, to put it nicely, to put it mildly. There's a wake-up process that's happening, a reawakening, if you can say it that way. What are some of the key components of people waking up to the truth of what's really going on around them, coming out of some of that propaganda?
Well, a lot of it is, I would attribute social media has been a big help. For a long time, we all were under like this cloud, this psyop, where the mainstream media, they had a grip on the minds of Americans. And then there's this introduction and this advance of technology, which puts media in directly into the hands of the American people. And you have voices and platforms like mine and platforms like this, which are actually, we're in tune to the culture and what's going on. And we're speaking out and saying, wait a minute, something is fundamentally wrong here. And so the advent of social media, also, we've had 50 years of seeing post-civil rights, if what the left tried to engineer was going to improve our outcomes. And we see that we are worse. Our children are at the bottom academically. They can't compete on any global level. Our communities are filled with crime. We've got drugs and fentanyl and then open borders. There are all of these different aspects of American life that has just been broken down, and the fabric of the country is eroding. And I'm laying the claim at all of this erosion at the feet of liberalism.
Absolutely. I was a Michigan State student majoring in social work. Started out in journalism and eventually went back to that, but I graduated in social work. I worked in the field. Saul Alinsky was one of the people we read. He is absolutely a socialist. And they were pushing, and he really advocated for even violence to shake things up. But I grew up around Detroit. The riots in the 60s destroyed communities that they lived in, that a lot of the Black people lived in. And so a lot of the businesses, and we saw that with the George Floyd riots. Anytime you have rioting and the people in the community are rioting, they make it worse for themselves. The businesses leave, they don't have stores to shop in. This is where they live. And I was a big fan of Martin Luther King, and everything seemed like a good idea. And I think a lot of people had good intentions, but wouldn't you say that they didn't? I mean, Saul Alinsky was all for socialism right from the beginning, but they didn't always see that, wait a minute, the outcomes are not going to be what you hoped for. And so now we need to look at it and say, you can't just keep throwing more money at the problem, right?
Right. I think what we need to do, it's okay for America to do an autopsy of where did, like, if you're in a car and you're on a trip somewhere and you're trying to figure out, okay, we got lost. The best way to figure out how to find your way again is to go back where things kind of went left. And I do argue that the civil rights operation of the 1960s, of where people who alleged to have good intentions were trying by using the gun and the sword to force change in America that I believe would have happened eventually, but they wanted to do it by using the government to force this type of change. And what happens with that is feminism was introduced. Before we got on here, we talked a little bit about abortion and how that seems to be a form of birth control, not just in America at large, but particularly within the Black community. And I lay a lot of that worldview and ideology and that way of thinking, I lay that at the foot of a psyop that was used within our country at the feet of MLK. A lot of people may not know this, but MLK was the first recipient of the Margaret Sanger Award, and that's not by accident.
Wow.
This wicked woman, she identified Negro pastors and preachers that had the ear of the culture and that were incredibly influential in order to sell the Black community on, hey, maybe you're having too many children. Maybe all this being fruitful and multiplying and filling the earth is not what's best for you. This is what you need. And if you knew and understand the influence that the Black preacher had in the Black community, he was like, I mean, his word, he was so influential and so well respected that if he said something was good, then people would kind of go along and believe it. And so if he's the recipient of the Margaret Sanger Award, and then we look at the numbers that Planned Parenthood targets the Black community, is it a wonder that not only are not being born, but our families are broken and are decimated because we don't even have a healthy foundation to draw back from, because we've got effectively 3 and 4 generations of bastards raising bastards.
Ooh, wow, we're going to take a break, but I want to say something about that Margaret Sanger Award. I didn't realize Martin Luther King received it. So when we come back, we'll talk more about this.